Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Plan Your Intelligent Information Strategy in 2018. I'm Teresa Resick, the Director of Webinars and Virtual Events here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And with me today is Bob Larrabee, also from AIIM. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. So very pleased to have you here with us. Just as we get started, I just want to offer a few pointers for you for viewing today's webinar. By joining our webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience, so feel free to open, close, or resize the different windows. And across the bottom of your screen is a list of all of the widgets that are available to you. And Group Chat is one of those widgets that's available to you, and I encourage you to open that up. And so just click on that icon along the bottom for the Group Chat, and in there you'll be able to text chat with each other and also with a few of us here at AIIM. Do ask questions of Bob throughout the hour using the Q&A feature, and Q&A is to the left side of the screen right now. And we will hold them until the end, where we should have about 5 or 10 minutes to answer them. But you can also use this feature to ask for technical assistance. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time. Just look to the resources list, and that's to the right of the slide area. There are also a few other documents and links in there to help you learn more about today's topic. Just click in there at any time, and the resources will open in a new browser tab, and you can save and read them after the webinar. At the end of this webinar, a brief survey will open in your browser, and it's also in the widget area in the slides, below the slides. And we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd take a few moments to offer your feedback and to suggest other topics for us to cover. And this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. And I'd like to introduce Bob Larrabee because he is going to be doing the bulk of our presenting today. Very pleased to have him here with us. Bob is the Vice President and Chief Analyst of Market Intelligence here at AIIM. And Bob is an expert in the application of advanced technologies and process improvement to solve business problems and enhance business operations. With over 30 years of industry experience, including product management, R&D, marketing, sales, and education, his passion is to share his knowledge and experience with organizations seeking to improve their operations. So right now I'm going to turn things over to Bob to begin his talk today. Bob?
Thank you, Teresa. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's great to be here, and we welcome you all. And we're going to start talking about intelligent information management. This is a term that you're going to be hearing from AIIM a lot in the coming months. Intelligent information management. It's really something that we're passionate about. And really, when you think about it, as the currency that fuels and funds digital transformation, information really is your most important asset. When you think about what information represents to a business, AIIM believes that there is a core set of information-driven capabilities that are necessary for achieving business transformation. And this is what we refer to as intelligent information management, or AIIM. And it comprises of these different elements: rationalizing and modernizing the information infrastructure, digitalizing core business processes. When you think about it and when you look at your own businesses, think about how many manual business processes still exist in your own business organization. How many manual things are still happening there. We talk about optimizing collaborative environments for customer and employee experiences, and automating governance and compliance. And then finally, leveraging deep learning and machine learning capabilities. So we're going to look at these a little bit deeper as we go through this session. But all of these different elements are what we refer to and what make up intelligent information management. And really what it comes down to is thinking about and designing our information ecosystems and infrastructures better, and thinking about how we want to utilize this information in better ways than we ever did before. And so one of the things that we look at, and of course what Teresa was referring to in my role in market intelligence, is that we do a lot of research. And in our study, called Business Process Automation in 2017, Designing an Intelligent Workplace, we found that 79% of respondents that we talked to indicated that BPM, Business Process Management, is really significant in their minds. 45% actually said that it's significant, and 34% told us it was imperative for the success of their business, and that process improvement and automation projects in their organizations are focusing on customer experience. So really what they're saying is they want to have happy and loyal customers, right? And so the idea of this is that they're turning their attention on their customers. So trying to make their customer experience or give their customers an experience that they'll remember and keep them loyal and happy customers. And so the idea is that they want to leverage their information ecosystems. They want to turn those business processes into something that's going to enhance that customer experience. But not only the customer experience, one of the things that we also find that's true is the employee experience is extremely important as well. And so when it comes to the way that we work with technology and we use it in business, especially in today's workplace, the remote worker and the mobile workforce, think about where work is performed today. You know, any location, any time, day or night. We could be out in the field. We could be up in the air, working in the cloud, above the clouds. I do this all the time. I travel quite a bit. So I could be at 36,000 feet on my way someplace, and I'm working, right? So I'm connected through the cloud, working as I'm flying. So basically, I have access to all of my information, interacting via the processes that we have at AIIM, anytime, anywhere. So many of the business leaders that we've talked to have said that when they put their employees first and they focus on the employees and give them the tools that they need, give them access to the information that they need when they need it, and they give them that interaction or interoperability with their customers and with their peers, give them that employee experience, right, that enhanced employee experience, happy employees. Happy employees translates into happy customers, and of course, happy customers then equals loyal customers. And so this is part of that equation as well. So intelligent information management, focusing on the customer, focusing on the employees, giving them the right tools for the job, giving them access to the information and the processes at the time that they need them, when they need them.
You know, Bob, you're mentioning having the right tools for the job. Examples of those type of tools, having the right kind of collaboration system, even just from the happy customer experience side, with employing electronic forms, electronic signatures to help the processes go more quickly, multi-channel capture, and even your example of just, for the remote workers, the file sync and share along with collaboration. Those are such important tools to have in the organization. Just thinking of contractors, builders, large construction sites needing to be able to pull up the plans or ensuring that you have the latest specs that you need to be working from. Having the right information at the right time with these tools, making that available, that is just so crucial.
Absolutely. And there's so many industries right now that are coming to realize the advantages of being able to do that. The remote access, the remote capabilities, and the advantage that it would give them. Getting away from all of the manual processes, getting away from the physical, and going digital. And a lot of them, it's one of those things where one of the things that I've heard so often is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's not a matter of fixing something that's broken. It's a matter of improving something that can be improved. And really, that's what this is all about. It's looking at it and saying, okay, it's working, but it could be so much better. And I'll give you an example of a hospital. My daughter works as a nurse, and she was working in the neurological ICU. And they had decided, it's here in the States, and when the regulations changed for patient information, their hospital was one of the ones that decided to get out in front of this. And so the neuro ICU decided that they were going to make some changes, and they were going to go digital for patient records right up front. And they did. My daughter, I'm so proud of her, got right in front of it and said, I want to be part of this transition team. And so they decided that they were going to use mobile devices, and they were going to get patient records out there and get rid of the paper and so on. One of the things that, and this is a challenge no matter what you do, one of the things that they didn't take into consideration, and they found out after the fact, was the interface. And so when they did go live, they found that the doctors were resistant to it. And what happened was the doctors were so used to coming in, looking at the paper charts, and looking for their colored tab. And they just didn't want to use these tablets because they couldn't find their information quick enough. They were looking for their colored tab, and they were so upset. So they redid the interface and gave the doctors back their colored tabs on the tablets, made it look like what they were used to in the paper world. And once they made that transition, that change, the doctors started resonating to it because it started to mimic what they were familiar with. So change management became a real big part of this. And this gets back to giving them, something that they can work with, the right tool for the job, but it had to be familiar. And what ended up happening is they really did resonate to it, but it was also an advantage to the nurses. And my daughter told me, she said that the best part of it was when the doctors finally got comfortable with it, they also gave them a voice interface. And the doctors stopped writing, and they started dictating. And the best advantage was they were using speech to text. And the nurses didn't have to decipher the bad handwriting anymore. And if there was a question with what the text said, they could always play back what was spoken because they kept the spoken word as well. So there was advantage all the way around. So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but it gets back to, in the end, they had happy employees all the way around, and it was a much better process. So yeah, the right tools for the right job, Mm-hmm. And the doctors likewise could actually log into the system after the fact, and they could listen, and they could do what they needed to do remotely as well from the patient records, which they couldn't do previously. So that was another advantage, is that if a doctor was off-site, they could actually get into the system and they could look at all the updated files. And now they could look at what's going on with the patient records, and they could actually make some recommendations or suggestions as to what to do from a remote location. So advantage all the way around. So one of the things also, when we talk about digital transformation and we talk about this whole movement, one of the things that we found from our study, State of Information Management, our businesses digitally transforming are stuck in neutral. Serious disruption in business would occur within 15 minutes if a major outage were to happen. And this is something that we have to be prepared for too, right? Because we're talking about intelligent information management, we have to plan for disruption. And so 15 minutes, that's not really a lot of time, but if a major outage were to happen, this would be, serious disruption for some of the businesses. And when we expanded that, and we said what would happen in an hour, the number increased from 12% of respondents to 33% who said this would be a really serious, situation for us. And I think this is a little bit conservative, really, but it brings us back to this first point in the AIIM elements, which is rationalize and modernize the infrastructure and be prepared. extend that infrastructure and meet the needs of today's business and the worker who can be anywhere working at any time. And what it means is we've got to be prepared as well. So extend that infrastructure, but prepare the infrastructure. What if? What if something were to happen? In the case of disaster preparedness, I live in Florida, and Florida is, Hurricane Lane, right? So we have to be prepared. What if? What if a hurricane were to strike, and what if the systems were to go down? How would we access information? And where I live, it had been 82 years since a hurricane had stricken this area, and we had that happen this year. And for 6 days, we were without power. Internet was there, but power wasn't, and so we had to fire up the generators, and we were then able to access the internet. I unfortunately couldn't get it through my provider because the terminal down the street was still without power, but I was able to do it through my cell phone. I was able to use my cell phone as the access point. So we need to be prepared to deal with these types of situations. And so I was able to work. I was able to carry on. So think about the many jobs that are managed in the field today compared to even just several years ago. There's like salespeople. Those are kind of obvious, but those people that are in oil and gas, or the utility workers, healthcare workers, anybody working with information today is now likely to be enabled to work remotely and connect from any location on the planet, or even above the planet. And we can work from any location at any time. It could even be, unfortunately, on holiday. Some of us are on call, even though we're away, even though we're on vacation or on holiday. In some of our jobs, we have to be made available, and so we have to be ready to go. So this is one of those things that we have to be prepared for. And so this brings us to the next element also, that as we do prepare, we look at things like governance and compliance, and we hear about the cloud and cloud use and mobile device use, and that brings us to governance and compliance. And in our study called Governance and Compliance, a Real World View, we found that 24% of the respondents indicate that information governance, IG, and data security is high on the agenda for their senior management teams. This is a big number. 27% that we talked to have plans in place to actually investigate and audit their information ecosystems. We also found that respondents reported data loss due to staff negligence and bad practices. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because they're not talking about technology here, they're talking about people. And they also said that they couldn't find records that were required during times of litigation and audit. So this is an area where technology certainly can play a significant role in IIM. And we see this as point 4 in the elements where we can automate governance and compliance. This is an area that in the same report we found that automated tools are being used to tag, add, or enhance metadata based on a specified set of rules. And it's also an area where many businesses could improve, and leverage the technology. So this is one of those things where we can leverage technology better than we ever have. Help us with governance and compliance, and help us get a handle on some of these things. So data protection, security, and compliance, they've always been there, but managing it has been kind of the challenge, and typically it's been the human factor that's been the biggest challenge of all. And so in this area, automation plays a big role going forward, especially from a process-centric perspective. From the moment that information or data enters the information ecosystem, it has to be identified, cataloged, and managed properly and securely. And the more we can automate this and align it with our governance policies and rules, the less risk there is of error and loss, or misfiling, if you will, miscataloguing. And so this is not to say that humans will never be needed again, but if there's minimal need for intervention and more consistency in our practices, this is where we can gain some advantage in the use of automation and technologies there.
Bob, you were talking a lot with the data protection, security, and compliance, and obviously GDPR is looming, and we've had a lot of other webinars and discussions around GDPR, and the implications there puts an urgency to looking at protection and security and other ways for managing the information that does come into your organization.
Yep, GDPR definitely is something that, and this is an interesting one because, of course, GDPR affects everybody in Europe, but it's also one that affects everybody on a global scale. If you're doing business in Europe and the European community, then it certainly affects everybody around the globe. And when we talk about GDPR and having to comply with GDPR, there are certain elements that certainly could be looked at, and you can leverage some of the technologies to help with that. The automated features of, especially when we talk about data capture and capturing those certain elements, and only those elements where you set up the rules based on GDPR, and you set up the rules that say I need to capture this type of information or these elements of information and only these things. Or you can set up things like retention periods or disposition based on the GDPR guidelines. And you can automate some of those elements as well. So this is some areas, I think, where automation and some of the automation technologies can come into play.
And certainly adhering to the good governance and records management practices.
Yes, absolutely. And this brings us into the idea of capture. And in the study that we did in 2017 called Improving Business Operations in 2017, Capturing Vital Content, we found that content analytics was being looked at as a way to improve process productivity and free up different bottlenecks and overloads. And this brings us to the final point of AIIM, which is deep learning and machine learning. And these are terms in an area that we're hearing a lot about right now, but definitely in the coming year and going forward, this is an area that we're going to hear really a lot about, the use of analytics and AI coming together, where we're going to learn from data and it's going to help us make decisions and predict various outcomes. And I know that I'm really oversimplifying this. I could do hours on this topic, but really what it comes down to is we're seeing businesses take a really heavy interest in using this approach to improve their overall business operations. And this is where we start hearing these terms about things like robotics. And one area that's really getting a lot of attention these days is an area called robotic process automation, or RPA. And it's not physical robots. I mean, the minute you start talking about robotics, people immediately start seeing these robots, is standing there. And of course, the picture that I chose is the picture of a robotic hand, right? But it's really software that's serving in the same role as maybe a robot would, taking over activities, things like data entry, for example. And RPA, where we're seeing a lot of use in it right now, is finance, where it is doing data entry. And where once you might have had data entry clerks doing this, RPA really is doing a lot of this and transactional type of things, but also starting to do some decision-based processes. And so this is where it's an extension of these technologies, is the technologies that is starting to, and it's going to expand in the coming years. And I think you're going to see more and more use of RPA in different business areas going forward. I think you're going to start seeing it not just in finance, but in HR. You're going to start seeing it expand into many different areas as well. So, robotics, we hear about robotics and people think about, the physical robots running around. And I've actually had people say, robots aren't here. We're not going to see robots in business, but we are. They're already here. They're already in our lives. So.
Well, an interesting way that I've learned to think about RPA is, I heard someone say to consider it an extension of your workforce and don't think of it as a new technology because of how it is enhancing the processes. And you already have to know what process you want to enhance, but still putting, as you said, this software, put that to work to make things more efficient for your organization.
Exactly. In fact, there's a commercial here in the States. I saw it the other night for the certified management accountants. I think I didn't quite catch who it was that did the ad, but it was robots in the finance department, and they were handing different reports to a finance manager. And it was like, here's your year-end report, here's this report, that report. And when he went into the boardroom, there was a robot sitting in his seat. And he just kind of looked at the robot, and the robot said, sorry, I'm just keeping your seat warm for you. And he got up, and the finance manager sat down in his place. In the end of the commercial, it said, don't think of these robots as replacing you. Think of them as helping you. They're not here to replace you. They're here to enhance and help you. And really, that's what it is. The idea of it is to serve and to help with a lot of the job, a lot of the activities that go on behind the scenes. And so it's like running reports and doing a lot of these types of things that are really repetitive. And really, that's what it's all about. You know, it's all of these repetitive type of things, report running and data entry type of activities, where the robots really can be of great advantage. So that's really, you know, kind of where it is, and that's where deep learning and machine learning comes in, and we can start leveraging those types of technologies to really enhance business operations and give us greater insights and help us become much more efficient in our operations, our day-to-day operations. And so this brings us back to the elements that I started talking about, which is rationalizing and modernizing the information infrastructure, to really take a step back and look at what you have and understand, you know, what do I have today, and does it really make sense? When I look at my workforce, when I look at the tools that are available to me as compared to what I have today, and what I will need tomorrow, and modernize that information infrastructure, do I have the right tools for the workforce? Do I have the right tools for the job? Am I leveraging cloud and mobile technologies the way that I could? You know, some of the examples that we gave earlier. If I have a more mobile workforce, can they access the information and can they interact with my business processes the way that they should? And that gets down to the second point, which is digitalizing the core business processes. You know, how many manual processes do you still have in your business organization? And you know, should they still be manual processes? Do they need to be? Digitalize those core business processes. Let's get away from the manual processes because it really does choke the business. And let's digitalize as many as we can. And then optimize collaborative environments for both your customer and your employee experiences. You know, collaboration, we collaborate every day. This really is a collaborative environment that we're in right now. And so this is one of those things that we're looking at, and we look at this and say, what's collaboration? Well, it's sharing knowledge, it's sharing interactions, it's sharing experiences, and so sharing information. And so how do we do that? So optimize collaborative environments so that we can share experiences, we can share information, we can share all of those things. Right? And then automate the governance and compliance areas of your business as much as you can. The minute you capture information, let's get it into that environment, bring it into that information ecosystem and put it under control. Apply the appropriate metadata. Extract only the information that you need under GDPR guidelines. Don't leave yourself open for risk. And then finally, leverage the deep learning and machine learning capabilities that are out there. let the system become one of those that assists you. Artificial intelligence, decision making, all of those tools that can help. Robotic processing, all of those things that can help streamline the operations of your business. So those are all things that bring about intelligent information management. And really, it comes down to developing a strategy, thinking about the way that you want to work tomorrow, as opposed to the way that you're working today. So developing a strategy, looking forward, and saying, here's where I am today, and it's how am I doing business today? How do I want to do things tomorrow? And developing that roadmap, right? Developing that roadmap. And so taking the next steps, things that you can do to go forward. So one thing, and you've already taken this step, is turning to AIM as a resource, right, for research and learning, and joining us for webinars like this. And I do thank you for doing that. There's a resource list available to you today on your screen. There are some great resources available to you today. You can download them now, but also at the AIM website. And there's also the AIM conference, AIM 18 in San Antonio, Texas, that's coming up, and Teresa will talk a little bit about that in a moment. But that's something that you can do. And then, of course, talking with the suppliers and service providers. These guys are in the field every day, and they see all kinds of things. They really do. They see all kinds of things out there. And they're a great resource. Pick their brains. Say, here's what I'm trying to do. What other companies have you worked with like mine? And what have you seen along these lines that would help me? And then if you've never tried anything like this before, pick one thing that we've discussed today. Just one. Maybe it's looking at the idea of digitalizing a business process. And just pick one process and bring that back to your organization and look at how you can improve that one element. And work on that to improve your information management processes and practices, and begin there. And then finally, keep in mind that intelligent information management really begins with you, right? It begins with you. Put yourself in the center, and you're the one that needs all of this information. You're the one that needs to interact with all of these processes. If this was you at the middle of this, how would you want to deal with this? Regardless of where the information lives, if it's on-premise, if it's in the cloud, regardless of what process it is, how would you need to interact with these things? And think of it from that perspective. You're the customer, you're the employee, and you're the one that needs to deal with this. Look at it from those eyes, right? From the outside in. Look at it from the outside in, from their eyes, from your eyes. And then work from that perspective, right? So intelligent information management. Develop that strategy, develop that plan, right? And so these are some of the things that you need to think about. When you think about some of the barriers, right? Like we hear all the time. We thought about cloud. We think about things like, we want to go to the cloud, but we're really not sure. Well, I keep hearing all the time, well, it's governance, it's security. Really, it's not necessarily. It's not necessarily. A lot of times what we find is it's change that stops people. It's change that stops businesses. It's a fear of the unknown. And really what you need to do there is do some due diligence. Go out and find case scenarios. Talk with different organizations that have done this and say, I know that you've had this situation before. How did you get past this? So Teresa, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's see if there's some questions out there that we can answer.
Thanks, Bob. And we have been listening to Bob Larrabee, AIM's Chief Analyst, and we do want to take your questions, so feel free to submit questions. We have some that have already come in, and one of the questions, Bob, someone is asking specifically how to get started with enterprise search in a hybrid world, having some of your content on premises in the cloud. What are the ways to embrace that hybrid environment?
That's an interesting one.
And if it's not even enterprise search specifically, but just having your content in the multiple repositories.
It's an interesting one because there are many different approaches to it. Enterprise search in a hybrid world, really, I think what it is, first of all, is to understand, first of all, having a goal. What is it that you want to achieve in relation to your search? There are different approaches to search. Do you want it to search for everything, or do you want it to be a focused search? There are different types of search tools available out there. There are broad search tools which will search everything, like a Google search, for example, where you type something in, you do keyword search, and it will just come back with 1 million hits. And then there are other types of search tools. One that comes to mind is a tool called Copernic, and you can actually target your searches. You can tell it specific, specific repositories that you want it to look at, and it will only hit on those. And so it really depends what you're trying to accomplish with your search. I guess
you also have to factor. You also have to factor in the data and security of the person conducting the search.
Yes.
Do you want the results to return only what they have security level permissions to see and interact with, or see every result? And obviously, there's still,
and there are some
personnel records and.
Yeah, and there are some instances. For example, I'll give you an example of government agencies that I've dealt with, that the person conducting the search had the right to know that something existed, but didn't have the right to actually see what was in it. And so they were allowed to see who the author was. And as such, they were allowed to then contact the author and make a request for the information that they required. And if they were then authorized to see that element of information, it would be released to them. So there are different levels of search and what I refer to as find capabilities. So I would say probably the best bet is what you would have to do is develop a set of requirements in relation to what you want search to do. That when you conduct a search, you want it to be able to do X, Y, Z, and return results in a certain way. And I know that it sounds difficult, but I think that's going to be the best approach if you can possibly do that. I hope that answers your question.
We have another question that's come in, and someone's asking that there is one of these initiatives that you've been talking about that they want to introduce and start the conversation in their organization. How to build the right teams to get the right stakeholders, how to bring the right groups together in an organization to start this conversation, to start getting the attention of the executives, and an extension to that, for how to get that funded.
Building the right team. I've always found that the best approach is to actually build a cross-functional team. And what you want to do is, certainly you're going to need executive sponsorship. And what I like to do is build a team that's cross-functional in the sense of cross-departmental. And so I like to have somebody from HR, somebody from finance, somebody from legal, of course, because you're going to be talking about governance and compliance. So I want somebody to represent them. I want somebody to represent IT because you're going to be talking about infrastructure. So what I try to do is make it a cross-departmental team because you're going to be impacting a lot of different areas, or you're going to be affecting a lot of different areas, but you want input from all of these as well. As you go through and you talk about extending the infrastructure, when you talk about optimizing collaborative workspaces, you talk about digitalizing business processes, especially a business process. When you change a business process, for example, let me give you an example. If you were to change procurement, the way that you're processing a purchase order or a purchase requisition, if all of a sudden you make a change to the process, the way that it's being done, then you're going to impact the way people interact with that process. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody has to be 100% all the time, but it means that when you propose something, they should be made aware that this proposal is there, and that this is going to come about. Because what you don't want to have happen is all of a sudden you've got your project in motion, and all of a sudden somebody comes up from nowhere and jumps in front of it with something that will stop your project. And I've seen that happen over and over again. And it's in some cases, depending on the project, it could be that, like you might have a full-time project manager, but representation from the different departments may not need to be full-time. It might be part-time. So, for example, the legal department, I might just need them to review something on occasion. Same way with finance. I might just need them to review the budgeting elements or things along those lines. So I may not need them full-time, but.
And another way or something else to keep in mind once you pull this team together and start the discussions in your organization, that to get this initiative to go through, you need to talk about it in a way that's going to resonate with the business objectives, the KPIs, the annual goal, however your organization states it, on what that mission is, and not in terms of, we need data security.
Right.
You need to articulate it in a way that's going to resonate with each stakeholder group so that they will see it from their perspective to fully embrace it and sign off on it and stay engaged with the project throughout its life.
Business goals, business problems. Business goals, business problems. And it's always one of those things that, what is the overarching goal of the business organization? What is the goal of the department that you're dealing with? And what is the business problem that you're trying to solve with this? And that is one of the things that I've always found. If you are not addressing those things or aligning to those things, then certainly you're not going to be formulating a winning proposal. But if you're not dealing with a business problem and you're not addressing a business goal that aligns to the overall organizational goals, then you're not going to get the executive support.
Okay. Well, Bob, one of the things that you had mentioned earlier, you were talking about the different resources that we have available to share with everyone today. And yes, these are linked in the resource list off to the side. When you download a copy of the slides, these reminders will also be there. Bob mentioned some new ebooks that AIIM has out fully explaining what we're talking about, intelligent information management. And there's each of these papers take these 5 main points and talk about them in different ways to help you articulate within your organization and help you understand and give you ideas on where to take things. So there's 3 very good papers on this one link. You can also get to it by going to AIIM/IIM for Intelligent Information Management. And so there's some excellent resource and information in here. So I encourage you to and go ahead and click on that link in the resources, and then after the webinar you can download all of those papers that are in there. Also, Bob mentioned the AIIM conference that's coming up in San Antonio, Texas in the U.S., and it's coming up in April. And we have a little less than 1 week left for our early bird pricing that does expire at the end of January. Feel free to reach out, come to the website, and you can talk with one of our service representatives who can answer any question that you may need. There's a wealth of information on the website right now, and that's at aimconference.com. And again, there's a link in the resources for you. And there's our events vice presidents even have a handy tool in there to ways to help you make the case to your bosses to get the funding to travel to a conference, and lots of great learning and examples of people's experiences from prior events. But there's always a wealth of roundtable discussions, so you're interactively talking with your peers. It's not just a lecture-style conference. So there's a wide variety of great learning opportunities here at the conference, and there's always fabulous keynotes every day. So encourage you to consider coming to our conference. And then also there's training that AIIM offers, and there's a variety of live instructor-led training as well as online self-paced classes. And you can thoroughly immerse yourself with deep dive courses, or there's some quick study offerings that we have on our site available to you. And we can also arrange to have a trainer come to your place of business and provide a custom perspective of our instructor-led programs configured to what your organizational needs. And we do offer classes throughout Europe, and so it would be local for you to travel to this. And so information on all this can be found at aim.org/training. And again, if you go to that site, if you have any questions about it, someone from our team will contact you back and answer any questions that you have and help you decide which program would be right for you and for your organization. So I greatly encourage you to check that out as well. And since we are getting to the end of our webinar time today, I just want to remind you that we've recorded the webinar and it'll be available in the next day or two. So do feel free to come back, listen to it again, and invite your colleagues to listen to this. I mentioned all of the resources, and don't forget a survey is going to open up on your desktop, or you can click on it right now in those widgets across the bottom. I highly value your feedback and would love to hear from you. And so please offer your comments and suggest future topics for us to cover. And as we bring our webinar to a close, I just want to ask Bob Larrabee for his closing thoughts today, just to sum up everything that he has shared. Bob?
Thanks, Teresa. I think it's just basically take the first steps. You've taken a step here by joining us, and I think the next one is to go back and look at it. Look at your business, take a step back, look at how AIIM can work for you. Look at that first process, look at that bit of information, your ecosystem, and look at where you want to begin. And by all means, take advantage of AIM. Come and join us again at future webinars and use us for a resource. We're here to help you. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, everyone, for your time today. For AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we'll see you again real soon.